We've been waiting for a long time for this news, says Palestinian as Hamas agrees to part of Trump's proposal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said early on, Saturday, October 4th, that Israel was preparing for an immediate implementation of the first stage of Trump's Gaza plan for the release of Israeli hostages following Hamas' response. The Palestinian militant group on Friday, October 3rd, issued its response to Trump's 20-point plan after the U.S. president gave Hamas until Sunday, October 5th, to accept or face grave consequences. Netanyahu's office said Israel will continue to work in full cooperation with the president and his team to end the war in accordance with the principles set out by Israel, which align with President Trump's vision. World leaders and officials on Friday, October 3rd, reacted positively to Hamas agreeing to some parts of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. Trump told Israel on Friday to immediately stop bombing Gaza after Hamas agreed to release hostages and some other terms in a U.S. plan to end the war. But vexing issues like disarmament appeared unresolved. Hamas on Friday issued its response to Trump's 20-point plan after the president gave the Palestinian militant group until Sunday, October 5th, to accept or face grave consequences. The U.S. president, who has cast himself as the only person capable of achieving peace in Gaza, has invested significant political capital in efforts to end a 2-year-old war that has killed tens of thousands and left U.S. ally Israel increasingly isolated on the world stage. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. I welcome and I am encouraged by the statement issued by Hamas announcing its readiness to release hostages and to engage on the basis of the recent proposal by @POTUS. I urge all parties to seize the opportunity to bring the tragic conflict in Gaza to an end. I also thank Qatar and Egypt for their invaluable mediation work. I reiterate my consistent call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and unfettered humanitarian access. The UN will support all efforts toward these objectives to prevent even more suffering. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. I follow with great attention the developments in Gaza and renew my full support for President Trump's efforts to bring peace to the Middle East. The priority for all must now be to reach a ceasefire that leads to the immediate release of all the hostages. Italy remains ready to do its part. Colombian President Gustavo Petro. I agree this time with Trump. Demand the cessation of the genocide. If Trump moves his army to stop the oppression over Palestine, that army will be accompanied by the army of Colombia. French President Emmanuel Macron. The release of all hostages in a ceasefire in Gaza are within reach. Hamas's commitment must be followed up without delay. We now have the opportunity to make decisive progress towards peace. France will play its full part in line with its efforts at the United Nations, alongside the United States, Israelis and Palestinians, and all of its international partners. I would like to thank President at Real Donald Trump, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid. President Trump at POTUS is right that there is a genuine opportunity to release the hostages and end the war. Israel should announce it is joining the discussions led by the president to finalize the details of the deal. I have told the U.S. administration that Netanyahu has political backing at home to continue the process. By Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Australia welcomes progress on President Trump's plan to bring peace to Gaza. We have consistently been part of international calls for a ceasefire, the return of hostages, and unimpeded humanitarian aid to reach those in need. I reiterate our call on Hamas to agree to the plan, lay down its arms, and release all remaining hostages without delay. Together with our partners, Australia will continue to support efforts to end the war and work towards a just and sustainable two-state solution U.S. President Donald Trump gave Hamas until Sunday, October 5th evening, to reach an agreement on his plan for Gaza's future, calling it a last chance for the Palestinian militant group. An agreement must be reached with Hamas by Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. time, Trump wrote on Friday, October 3rd, on Truth Social. Every country has signed on. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. Trump on Tuesday said he would give Hamas 3 to 4 days to accept the 20-point document, which calls on the group to disarm, a demand it has previously rejected. Hamas is reviewing the proposal, a source close to the group said on Wednesday. The plan specifies an immediate ceasefire, an exchange of all hostages held by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the disarmament of Hamas, and the introduction of a transitional government led by an international body. Hamas has been a ruthless and violent threat for many years in the Middle East. They have killed and made lives unbearably miserable, culminating with the October 7th massacre in Israel. Babies, women, children, old people, and many young men and women, boys and girls, getting ready to celebrate their future lives together. As retribution for the October 7th attack on civilization, more than 25,000 Hamas soldiers have already been killed. Most of the rest are surrounded and militarily trapped, just waiting for me to give the word, go, for their lives to be quickly extinguished. As for the rest, we know where and who you are, and you will be hunted down and killed. I am asking that all innocent Palestinians immediately leave this area of potentially great future death for safer parts of Gaza. Everyone will be well cared for by those that are waiting to help. Fortunately for Hamas, however, they will be given one last chance. Great, powerful, and very rich nations of the Middle East and the surrounding areas beyond, together with the United States of America, have agreed with Israel signing on to peace after 3,000 years in the Middle East. This deal also spares the lives of all remaining Hamas fighters. The details of the document are known to the world, and it is a great one for all. We will have peace in the Middle East one way or the other. The violence and bloodshed will stop. Releases the hostages, all of them, including the bodies of those that are dead now. An agreement must be reached with Hamas by Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. Every country has signed on. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. There will be peace in the Middle East, one way or the other. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump.
I think what's going to happen is they're going to be hunted down. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die, and it's very, very bad.
Are you done?
And it got to be to a point where you're going to have to finish the job.
U.S. President Donald Trump has now urged Israel to finish the job against Hamas, signaling a dramatic shift from diplomacy to direct confrontation. Speaking from Scotland on a private visit, Trump declared, "I think they want to die. You're gonna have to finish the job." This comes just days after he withdrew his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and key U.S. negotiators from stalled Gaza's ceasefire talks. Trump added, "They're gonna have to fight and clean it up. You're gonna have to get rid of them."
Well, the Gaza situation, and I said this was going to happen when you get down to your last 10 or 20. We got a lot of hostages out. We took them out in numbers that nobody believed, a lot of them. And I said, when you get down to 10 or 20, I don't think Hamas is going to make a deal because that means they have no protection. And basically, that's what happened. Hamas didn't want to make a deal.
Have you seen that photo?
I think what's going to happen is they're going to be hunted down. They pulled out of Gaza. They pulled out in terms of negotiating. It was too bad. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die, and it's very, very bad.
Are you done with
and it got to be to a point where you're going to have to finish the job. And I said this was going to happen when you get down to your last 10 or 20. We got a lot of hostages out. We took them out in numbers that nobody believed, a lot of them.